the survival is for the fittest. So basically, if you're not born with the traits that can actually help you survive an environment, then basically you die. Sindio? So he posed the question about self-awareness. Now, because we are on opposing sides, we are on different sides, I will want to take this conversation in this direction. So there's a book called *Sapiens*, which I recommend we all read. So the writer narrates about the human evolution, basically following Charles Darwin's theory, and we try to look at how we have evolved as a human species. So that's how, over time, to where we are now. I'm basically now trying to explain the issues that we're experiencing now as a society. So today we talk about deviance. And for human beings, the way we've been able to survive basically is because, so in neuropsychology, your brain's neurons, we say, neurons that wire, fire, they wire. So over time, you find then if now as a person. So this generation, we start with the Stone Age. These people survived because they lived in clusters. And then human beings, we developed that capacity to do what? So we need each other to do for survival. And then that has been passed down. Keyword, passed down to generation. Not by learning, but because I know, as a person living in the Kalahari Desert, I will not walk that journey alone. Even if I will be walking alone, I will be walking looking for someone. Very instinctual. It's instinct. By instinct, we mean this is something that is inward. I understand you want to counter, I know. I have opened some loopholes, but here we are. So then, they are genes, they are passed down. So for instance, if I have a skill, it will be easier. We call them predispositions for our psychologists. It will be easier for my offspring, to acquire them, or sometimes even they come naturally. So you find, for instance, a father who was a mechanic, the child naturally will want to, you will see the child basically in the same line. Sometimes there is studies that have been done where there are things that were in a genealogy. So you find even your great-grandfather used to love maybe something to do with herbs, and then there's you now here who is very interested in medicine. Now your parents are lawyers. And so when you follow up, you realize, there was someone actually in our family who was more interested in the human body. So it's more of now, these are things that are within us. They are traits, they are characters. Now when we talk about deviance, then you find, for instance, when you talked about even schizophrenia, it does not have to affect every generation. But because the gene exists, that gene, that even for albinism, that gene exists. Even for deviant, that gene, even for addiction, you are predisposed. So there is a likelihood, even if both your parents never drink, then the day you test alcohol like this, you will want to do it again. I will tell this, there's a lecturer of ours who says he never drank until he was 18. And his family, both his parents are preachers. So the day he went into campus, he tested alcohol. He never stopped drinking. It does not supposed, because note one, the trait was there, it was existing, and then on following up, his grandfather died of alcoholism, and behind. So because his parents, you brought the issue of choice, and I mentioned this, and I will repeat, if there was nothing to choose from, then there will be no need for choice. So if I was born naturally good, my parents, these are people who are upright, they're living in this, there's this moral standard they've set. Then now, the one I brought for natural sin, original sin, where this kid tasted the sugar. And you mentioned this because the sugar was present. If this kid was naturally, quote unquote, good, they did not have this trait, then if they were told not to do it, they would not do it. And I will not negate the fact, again, it's very psychological. Of course, it is not 100% for everyone, and that is why when we mentioned this, we said we're talking about people who are already deviant. We're not talking about people who, as you mentioned, make a different choice. So it's not about the issue of choice, it's about the issue of the existence of these deviant traits. And then now when this, as long as there is that existence, as long as I was predisposed to this thing called sin, then it becomes very easy. So when a kid ukimkuja muulize like, "Wewe umekula sukari?" Hata kama iko huko, what will the kid say? No. So did you teach your kid to lie? Yeah?
I know that she let me shift from moderator to Daniel, but let me just ask. I'm going back to your theory of original sin, right? Where you stated we were all born sinners, right? Meaning then everyone is predisposed to a deviant trait.
Yes.
So now, then the debate beats the purpose, because now, if we're looking at that in that sense, then every one of us is predisposed to that, to be a deviant. Meaning, another bado choice inaingilia in the sense that I choose not to do a certain thing as much despite me having that gene. So the gene factor now becomes redundant. Why? Because we are all predisposed to it. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. And yeah.
If you're talking about original sin, there was Adam and Eve, yeah? And they were taught by God, don't do this. Don't do this. You're not taught. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't touch me. But Eve went and chose to pick that. So she had, and in her conscience, knowing it's good and it's bad. This is bad, according to what I've been taught not to do. So there is a knowledge, there is a step of knowledge. So either way, we are not literally born with sin, we are born with choices. In the aspect of you choose to do this and you choose not to do this. The aspect of will, you have the will to do this and not to do this. So even Adam and Eve, they did have that will, and they had the knowledge of this is not right and this is right. This is not right, this is right. So, and Eve chose not to. And Adam chose to blame Eve.
Again, I think that still comes to what we say the epigenetics, the genetic mutation.
Yes, so in short, it will be God is genetically evil, right?
Not God. It started with Eve, not God.
It's God who created us. If you're going back, we are going back.
No, God did not give birth to us.
You brought the aspect
He created
of sin.
us.
He created us.
Yes, not give birth to us. Yes.
Yes.
From soil.
So in short,
soil.
you're putting...
Yes, we are the only people who came...
From his creation. His creation. The snake, what does the snake represent? Basing on our knowledge, right? It creates first an animal and second a deceiver.
In accordance to Eve, the purpose, like the way that you set it as, Eve had a choice of, she had a choice, right? That's according to you.
Yes.
But the thing
according to what we were taught.
According to what you were taught.
Yes. So you were taught that we wouldn't have known who's Eve and who's Adam. We wouldn't have known that. Cindy, we were taught this.
Yeah.
Actually, we even have no idea if there was an Eve or an Adam, but we were taught that.
The genetic composition of Eve showed her that I need to eat this fruit for me to know what God doesn't want me to know. Was it a choice?
So it was...
You can imply that it was embedded in Eve by God.
No.
Yes.
No.
Exactly.
Now,
He's the
I
ultimate
think
creator.
we are going
He's
out of the
the
topic.
ultimate creator. We
let's
got into this
clear
point
this
because
this
he
was our
brought
point.
up the
These are
original
points, so you
sin.
can let us clear.
Original sin.
Let's clear this.
No, you brought the
Yes.
point of original sin.
Let's clear,
and
then
we're
we
going
move
back
ahead.
to the creator.
Yes. So the thing here is, Eve was not given birth by God, but they were created from soil. So it means when they made the original sin, from there, their genetic makeup of being predisposed to sin That's how it started. And since then, all the generations.
That soil. Who created that soil? No.
The issue started with Eve and Adam, not God. Yes, from there.
Yes.
Onwards.
Wait. And wait. That soil. Who
Not
put
soil,
it there?
not soil.
That soil. Who put it there? Who put it there? Who put it there? That's the question.
To Abel and Cain. Yes?
Who put that soil there?
And on up to us.
That's why the first human being, the first ever, like, when Adam, the Bible says when Adam knew Eve, the first human being was Cain. Sindio, what did Cain do? He killed Abel. The first natural human being was a murderer because of the epigenetics, the mutation, because the sin that was passed on from Adam and Eve.
The first
Cain,
natural human being is Adam because he was created.
no, human,
From us.
no,
It's the
no,
same.
no.
No, you were saying, what you're saying is the first child. The
first actual
from
human, like us, the first
from
human
another
being,
human being.
the first human being who is like you and me.
No, and
is
how
Cain.
What?
Okay, to mind a
And
philosopher.
why is Adam and Eve not the same as
Some. A minute.
So, is Adam
so
and
when we talk
Eve
about
a
theory,
creature?
some.
Yes.
When we talk about theories, the main reason why we are using theories to support all our arguments, we do not negate the fact that all theories ever, zote zinakuwa na loopholes. So sawa. From the theory of the original sin, when we pose the Charles Darwin's theory, when we pose the theory of evolution, zote, all these theories, even psychological ones, when you pose the theory of operant conditioning, all these theories, they have loopholes. All psychologists will agree with me, sindio? So what we do now is we use one theory and another theory to support each other. So now when we understand, now this is the purpose of debate, poking the holes in these theories. Sasawa. So the original sin I mentioned is not a psychological theory, it is a philosophical theory. Yes. And like all other theories, it has its loopholes. Bringing this back to psychology and bring us back to where we were, are we born deviant, or are we made by our environment,
and
influenced by our environment to become deviant? And I will say this is a point we are trying to make. We, using all the theories that we've posed, it is embedded in our genetics, the ability to be deviant. This does not negate the fact that there is choice, but having choice does not negate the fact that you actually have these traits to be actually deviant. I will ask this question. This is a very, it's a rhetorical question, but who has not done something that they were not supposed to do? By the silence, everyone has done something, quote unquote. We will not call it, because when we imagine deviant behavior, and we mentioned this, it's again a social construct. The issue of deviance, we even agreed here, is something that is a social construct. At some point when I was studying psychology, I read about a community somewhere in South America where the elder women teach the younger kids. You've gone through that. There's a community. The older women, when a kid turns 13, a boy, the elder women come and teach the boy sex. Basically, they have sex with the kid. So that in itself, in our African culture, is unheard of. It's taboo. You cannot do that. So for us, it will be deviant. But for them, because it's a norm, it's something actually that should be. When it's not done, then you have not taught this boy, how to satisfy the woman. For them now, that will be deviant. So then, and this is what we want now to pose. For us, in whatever culture we're in, because it cuts across all cultures, twin studies have been done. And twin studies suggests that there were twins who you mentioned, I think, yes, our learned friend, mentioned that from his experience, I've not had experience with twins or siblings, but from studies that have been done, you take two twins, same genetic makeup, you place them in different families. So twins were placed, some in a criminal family, and others in a very nice, very good family. So if the parents of the twins were criminal, there was a predisposition for even the kid in the good family to end up being a criminal. and vice versa. But the trick, it is not 100%. So I understand where this being a debate, I will not support you guys, but it's a 50-50. Research has it that it is 50-50, which now brings me to that circle. I don't know if I'm supposed to be concluding. We are arguing. Sawa. So then that means we have in us the ability to.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Before you say it, I feel like you want to add something.
No, I just want to wrap up so that we come into the new, fresh ideas.
Wrap up, and
Yes.
then, because we are
They are
running
out
out of time,
yes.
the next discussion, we're doing it in 10 minutes.
Sawa. So my point before I was cut short, it was about epigenetics. And again, I come back to that. The study of the rats that were exposed to stress and harsh environment. It is written, it is psychological, it says that these rats, they start developing some different type of genes. And that is also, it goes down to their DNA. So it means they are going to give offsprings of a different genetic makeup as opposed to them because of that environmental exposure. But again, I'm not supporting you guys. I'm still saying that environmental exposure affects our genetic makeup. So it means that you, from that environmental exposure, are going to give a different type of generation because of a change in or mutation in the genetic makeup.
Right. I see there is something missing, especially when we're giving the examples and supporting our points. Even the way in which cross-culturally we are, even in the practice of psychology, we still need to acknowledge that there is the cross-cultural practice where you are having to have conversations with different people of different cultures. Now, I would like to use the Bible context now that you've really insinuated a lot about the theory of original sin, right? And I would like to continue using the behavioral approach, whereby I want to emphasize or underscore the fact that all the behaviors are learned, okay? And in a manner that supports our point. Now, here is a story of biblical characters that we all have encountered, the story of Abraham. But I want to ask a question as I delve into that to the group. I would like you to tell me whether you know how your parents met.
You know how your parents met?
You know? I like the fact that a yes is coming from our opposing side. So there are chances that in one of our sittings, in our families, we tend to have conversations around our history, right? Now, let me use the example of the biblical characters. Abraham, there is a point in time when Abraham was in a controversial situation, and he said that Sarah was his sister. We all know that? That story is very consistent. We follow that story, and we found out that Isaac, in one of his journeys to Egypt, he also was in a controversial situation whereby I think these women were beautiful. The same for Rebecca, the wife to Isaac. They went to Egypt, and the man was so jealous. It's like, hey, the man, Epimelech, would have really wanted to take the wife. And so what did he used to do? He said, we'll introduce ourselves as, you're my sister. Now, that is another consistent story. Follow the story. Jacob. There is a time when the mother is having conversation and conspiracy to steal the blessings of the father, Isaac. And so he tells Jacob to pretend to have the fur in the hair, in the hand, so that he can steal the blessings. We can see through the story, we can see a consistency of life, which is passed from one other parent to the other. But then what is it exactly? Now the point, so that you don't use my argument to yes, to say it's genetics. What is it exactly that is consistent here? We see the ability to propagate or bring out the line, as it is also in the case of Eve, has nothing much to do with the genetics. It has to do with the operant conditioning, which is the pursuit of rewards, in pursuit of rewards and avoidance of punishment. So what is the rewards in every situation? The reward is the wife not to be snatched, right?
That was just one case. So it means you have the tendencies.
No, wait, you know, Abraham was also threatened. The whole idea of lying was because the wife was. But exactly the reasons given as to why he did that are given in the Bible. It's written. It's because the wife was a threat. She was very beautiful. The same thing for the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It is recorded that Eve saw the fruit and said it was desirable for the eye. It was also desirable for the stomach. It was also desired because it had the ability to make you know the good and the evil. So the rewards, actually what I'm saying. The rewards are the motivating factors here across all of them. So it is the avoidance of punishment, or probably the wife being snatched, which is they are trying to do this kind of escape mechanism of telling the wife to pretend that she's the sister. So what I'm saying here is the lying situation is not genetic. It is passed from it is learned from the parents who are actually telling.
I want us to do. Okay, order.
Am I confusing myself?
Order.
What am I saying?
Order.
I'm saying that they are having conversation. This is learned.
Join us, please.
Your presupposition on operant conditioning is that they are learning to they learned so that they get rewards. That's right, yeah. And operant conditioning is a process of learning. Means it takes place again and again. Abraham didn't have like a chance to learn again. It happened once. For Isaac, once. For Jacob, once. It means that they had that trait of lying from Abraham. They didn't learn through various occurrences.
I like that.
In order to get the reward. They didn't
look. You see,
Abraham didn't tell Isaac, when you meet Abimelech, lie like this. Isaac didn't didn't pass down that trait of lying to Jacob. From
it was
whom?
Passed down.
From whom?
Look, this is.
From whom did they learn? Yes, they learned. Yes, from whom? Yes.
I know. I started by asking. You're not listening because I already asked the question.
Let me pose this question.
But wait, we cannot say Abraham learned it once because we have no account of it. We have none.
Okay, you don't have the account.
What we are banking on is what.
This is what I want you to answer me. We are talking about the trait of lying, not lying from circumstance. Okay, so it's not the environment that they were exposed to. It's a trait in them. Like whenever they find themselves in a situation, they just lie. So it's just a trigger of the genetic composition within them to lie.
I think rather the point of contention is what you choose to use when you are in a controversial situation, which I believe what you choose to use as an escape when you are in a controversial situation like Eve is in a temptation. Abraham, the wife is being threatened to be snatched. Isaac.
Wait. Let me now bring it back to that. What did Eve tell Adam?
You see, can you come back to
Can I kidogo tu? Before we go back to the Bible.
Even Adam lied to God that it was not him at first.
So
Then he says generation.
yeah, can I? So a minute. Just one second.
Order. I'm still the moderator.
So I want to bring it back.
Can
I want
we
to
have
bring
one
it back
person
to
talk,
psychology.
please?
Just
Yes?
a minute. We bring it back to psychology. So we're talking about this trait. Basically, deviance being a trait that is passed down. And so you mentioned, so for us, we understand that there is trigger. But the question is now, when you're confronted with a situation, what is that influences you to make one decision compared to another? So for instance, there will not be deviance again if there are not situations that expose these people to that. Sindio? So if there is a disease for people who have an addiction to shoplifting, I don't know if it's a disease, it's a mental disorder. I don't remember the name. Kleptomania, yeah. So this is a person who understands the consequences of this thing that they are doing. They understand that it is not a socially acceptable thing to do, to shoplift. But on record, now, even statistically speaking, then there are actually, I don't remember the exact number, but there is a number of people who actually have this disease. And when they are caught, they are not even taken to prison. They are taken to a rehabilitation center. Why? Because this is something, I understand you will bring, as a psychologist, you have solutions to help this person. And anyway, there would not be need for psychology if we could not offer solutions to these things. But I want to bring it like this. There are conditions, even in psychology, that we do not treat, we manage. You agree with me? So by managing means it is existing, sindio? And being in existence, then when you say you're managing a condition, it means you've accepted that the condition exists. So that is why for the case of a person with schizophrenia, they will be taken through a lot of vigorous psychological programs to help them manage it as a condition. True. Same with all of these other things, all these other traits that we inherit. We learn to live with them. So by learning to live with them, then this is what I want us to agree. They exist. Ziko. So then we cannot sit here and say you actually learn. Because my first reaction is, so when a person is confronted, is triggered. So me and you were walking, sindio? One person steps on my leg. And another person steps on your leg. How we'll react will be very different. Sinukweli. But you have to agree, again, I know this is a debate, but you will not agree. But fact is, we will react different. And one of the factors is from our genetic makeup. If our family, I'm speaking as a person who is, so there are these quote unquote stereotypes where we say, I'm from Meru, we say Meru people tend to be aggressive. Sindio? So that is why, our voices will be raised when we are having normal conversations. We tend to be, think of it as excitable. We get excited easily. Yeah? So that is a stereotype. It's a stereotype. Stereotype, yeah. No. Yeah. So it's, and I will throw this now. If now someone in my family has a tendency to be aggressive, and quote unquote, I was not brought up, hypothesis, I was not brought up by a dad. But men, maybe in our lineage, tend to be aggressive. So over time, I don't have a person to actually model this behavior for me. You pose the case of GBV. Most communities, you grow up in an environment where even now, we are having, in the last 10 years, there is 25% increase in single mothers. That is statistically speaking. But I can bet you in 10 years, GBV, unless we tackle it, it will still be in existence. These are not people who have grown up with fathers beating their moms. So the point I'm trying to make is, these traits, they actually exist in us. So, because if, for instance, I am provoked, my reaction will be largely affected by the tendencies that I have inherited. So if there's a tendency for people in our family to be aggressive, there's a tendency there's now the aspect of choice, yes, but I will choose either I will raise my voice or I will throw a punch. But that trait will be that trigger, it will be what will influence this decision I'm making. That is why, as a counselor, you mentioned about awareness. One of the things we do is bring it to the awareness how people react when they are confronted with situation. So, in as much as the situation is what will trigger me to do this, there is that factor, that genetic makeup, that thing that I can trace back to my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, that thing that is in existence there. So, self-disclosure, my great-grandfather, he was a violent man. He was a hunter, quote-unquote poacher. So that was when he lived. And those were necessary skills for survival. Sinukweli. Back in the day when you're in the wilderness and this is your way of living. So over time, this is a trait that now is not necessary. Again, I will bring you back to the book called Sapiens. So this trait, it exists, but how it manifests, I will not now take a bow and arrow and run to, hunt. Senior, because the environment, the society that I am in, but how aggressive I am, maybe in situations when I'm in a boardroom and I need to close a deal. So not aggressive in a sense of being the negative type, but how I'm able to pitch my ideas, how I'm able to, be persistent, be consistent. These are traits that are very necessary for a hunter, even in the hunting ground. So in as much as they will not manifest themselves in a similar way that they manifested, these are traits that I have inherited and they serve me, or on the flip side, affect me. So now when it comes to deviant behavior, so if I inherited traits that are negative, then there's a tendency that those traits, when under the right triggers, will bring deviant behaviors. So we cannot negate the fact that siwezi toka tu hivi and then hakuna kitu ya kuiba and then niibe, hata kama kwetu kila mtu ni mwizi. Like, so there has to be that trigger. I'm saying trigger not to support your point.
But let me ask you something. Let's go back to the hunter's narrative.
Yeah.
You've said back then they'd take a bow and arrow and go hunt, right? Yeah. Now you can't do that because the environment is different. Meaning you still need the environment, right? To?
That is why I mentioned triggers. Exactly, I understand. Exactly. What I'm saying is...
Okay, fine.
My submission is that it's enough of this counting.
Yes, I want us to use a different, yes.
Yeah.
I want to...
Have fresh points.
Not even fresh points.
We were waiting for the right time.
I want us to use a different experiment that was done in 1971 by a psychology professor, Phil Rambardo or something. It's called the Stanford prison experiment. So what this professor did, yes? Yes. So what this professor did is he took students and divided them into prisoners and wardens. These kids, in their family, hakukuwa na ati warden ama a prisoner or something. That's just an experiment he did. So let's say he took like 5, I don't remember the exact number, 10 students, 5 prisoners, 5 wardens. And what the experiment proved is that these kids conformed to their roles that they were given. So the prisoners started, the wardens started becoming more mean to the prisoners. So he did an experiment for like, I think it was 2 weeks. So the first few days, the prisoners, the wardens were more fair to the prisoners, but with time, they started becoming meaner to the prisoners. They started treating them badly and everything. Why? Because society has that notion of wardens are mean towards the prisoners and everything. And then the prisoners now started behaving like prisoners. Yet, there was no history of them ever being in prison, and there was no history of any warden in the family. So now, how do you apply that? How did they change? Why did their character change through that experiment? And remember, no genetics. It was like, yes, I want us to define it that way. 1 point, 1 point. Okay, 2 points, 2 points. And then now we do the conclusion.
I'd like to reference what I said about Carl Jung and the idea of the shadow and how it stretches all the way to hell. I recently listened to a podcast about the exact same thing you're talking about, and it really interested me because if the roles were reversed, if the prisoners became guards and the guards became prisoners, the new guards would also be, they'll also like be harsh towards these prisoners. And that is to show that they have this propensity to become evil to these people. And there's something I like saying, is that you can't take an empty glass and expect water to pour out of it. Because you have that propensity to do evil, when, because you have that affinity for evil, to do evil things, to be mean, we get to act out these things because it's something that we genetically inherited. Every human being has that capacity for evil.
Yes. Let them counter.
Let me counter. All right. So when we began this conversation, our opposing group were calm and they were very orderly. Towards the end of the towards the end, they are very aggressive. They were almost throwing punches at all of us. Yes, if there were in the absence of the Maoists, that's why we are safe, right? Otherwise, they would have been having weapons. They would have actually brought all of us to relegation. Now, this is they are a real specimen of learning. They are warming up. They look at us, and we look like we are calm. So they have taken. They are learning to be the dominant. They are. That's just they are actually serving as a real specimen for how behaviors are learned, right? Yes.
I want to counter what he said.
You're countering us?
Yes, I want to counter his point. Nime decide to change position because it's already time. So debating the issue. So I can choose a side. But anyway, just for the purpose of keeping the in yangu personal, like for the purpose of keeping the conversation going, I like what you said. You said in that Stanford prison experiment, if roles were changed, the new guards would still take up the behavior of being mean to the new prisoners, right? So that has nothing to do with genetics. It has everything to do with environment and the role that they're playing at that particular moment. Because why were they submissive when these old prisoners were? Because that's how prisoners were supposed to be, Sindio, right? So it had nothing to do with genetics, more of the roles that they were given, which is an environmental factor. So to end our discussion,
I will have to answer you.
I want you to answer, and then I give a conclusion, and then we look at our Venn diagram.
So I will further what he said. So in the absence of traits, then there would be absolutely no reaction whatsoever. So this is what I'm trying to say. If you did not possess these traits, so we mentioned this, everyone has a shadow, that capability to be evil, to do evil. And that doesn't negate the fact that we also have that other side. So in yogi, we have that circle where there is the yin and the yang. So we possess both the qualities, good and evil. So I'm sorry, this is taking a more philosophical perspective, but I understand because whenever we talk about the whole idea of deviance is basically just trying to debunk what is good and what is evil, and that question is best answered in philosophy. So because in psychology we don't have good and bad, we just have pleasant and unpleasant. So then if I do not possess traits, and I will say this because I will talk, this is not research, but from observation. There are people, whenever you put them in a room, but there's these characters, a specific personality type, where these people, when you place them in whatever situation, they will thrive. So in as much as, even in prisons, we have prisoners who are able to be domineering. So you've seen it in movies, it exists. People who enter the prison systems, they're prisoners, but they're able to dominate that prison system even over the wardens. We can use factors like money, but the fact that a lot of people with money, but with different traits, cannot be able to do the things these other people do. And you find, I'll use the example of movies because that is the only experience I have. You know, these people who maybe they thrived as maybe kingpins and drug lords and all that, when they enter the prison system, they end up actually controlling that prison system because they possess the same traits that they used to in business outside, also in and that one of those traits being the ability to, I will use the resilience. You know, the resilience is one very, as you also mentioned resilience, Cindy. So this is a trait that a person has. So no matter where you are, you can actually be able to thrive. So in as much as the environmental factors are in place, which we choose to call triggers, some people thrive over them, which then shows that these things are inborn. There are things you're not actually taught in your environment. There are things, even you as a person, you just, they ooze out of you. For people who are, I use the choleric tendencies, people who are natural leaders. You know, you can find in a family, we can say everyone is choleric, but in some families, no choleric person, and then there is one person who is just choleric, and then you can trace it somewhere. You know, this person was like this and that. So we cannot negate the fact that in as much as, yes, it happens that people take up roles, but there are people who are, when you're these traits, you have specific traits, you know, and using the example of the yin and the yang, you have both. So it's more of which side is more domineering.
Which side you're feeding. Can I ask you a question, not to take sides again? Would you say perception is genetic or environmental?
Perception is environmental.
So now let me tell you, I'm bringing this up because you said, oh, let me sit down, sorry. I'm bringing this up because you said, mtu anaweza kwa kingpin, kwa streets, and akiingia kwa prisons, still take over, right? So now that, for me, is perception, in the sense that right now, if we were all to look outside and name 3 things that we've seen, best believe everyone will name something different. No one will name the same thing. Why? Because that's how we perceive things, right? So if my perception is different, even when I get into a trying environment that you called a trigger, then my perception will still stand. Meaning I will thrive because of my perception, not because of my genetic.
Can I choose to think of it differently and think of it as you possessing traits? Because this is actually not an argument. We actually have different perceptions about this, using what you said. So because for me, where I sit is you possessing traits that have been passed down, like the example I used. So the tendency to be outgoing and aggressive in terms of pursuit to whatever you want, that is a trait I have inherited that was passed down over from wherever it came from. Because I don't believe it starts with my great, up to history yangu, that is up to where I know. You know, so but now there's the different, and I think that is why we also choose different sides of this conversation, because we have different perceptions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing that I want to bring up on that same perception thing is, I can have the traits, I can have the genetics in me, but if I do not believe in whatever ability I have, if I don't have that perception to actually believe I can do it, then I won't do it. So at the end of the day, what I want to bring up is both nature and nurture play the same role, equal roles into building us, into shaping us. And that's what I wanted us to pick from this conversation. Nature and nurture go hand in hand. Does that make sense? So we go back to our Venn diagram. Tumepitisha time, but it's okay. So I want us to now look at this and now place them into the Venn diagram. So I know you didn't have time to discuss, so let's start with eye color. What is eye color? Is eye color more of a nature thing or a nurture thing? Mi nataka kusikia alafu, okay, tuseme genetic na environment. Is it more of genetic or environment? We all agree. Pia side ya opposing side. Okay. So, eye color. Don't look at my handwriting. It's the nanio that matters. Natural hair color. Genetic. Natural hair color. That is acha kama yenye nimeweka dye. Your natural hair color, whether black, redheads, blondes. Okay. Niandike in short. I am black group. I am accent. Ati? Accent ni genetic. Accent ni genetic. Unataka kusikia point yake. Accent ni genetic. Explain.
Yes, kuna wale they're born in they are speaking naturally because they go through a there are those like for example me, nikienda US, my friend when I come back, speaking to them now. So I have plans to do nothing.
I want to hear your point. Let me give an example. Let's use an example of the Meru governor, Kiraito. He studied abroad. He never came back with an accent. So I want to hear. So does that? So is it environment or?
And you see, when people go to India, you don't see them coming with that accent.
Indian accent. So it's more of environment. You pick up, msana anaenda coast siku tatu na rudi na accent ya coast, si ndio? So it's environment. It's not, it can't be. Body weight. Oh wait, before I do that, we all understand what a Venn diagram is, si ndio?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, sawa. So body weight. Nataka kusikia watu wa environment na watu wa nini, wa genetic. Mika, you seem how?
Well, it's genetic, but largely it's affected by the environment.
You can be exposed by things around.
Yeah, so it leans more to the environment.
I am.
Same as
Hair length.
it's also
Both.
Yeah, the food you eat.
Both. The food you eat, it is both. Talent is very natural.
And even the way you way.
So let me ask
the
you.
environment. If I am exposed to sunlight,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
there is a way in
There is a
the
lot. You don't get that in people in your family that have
What do people say?
It can't. It's more of environment. Sorry?
It's
Genetic, because like, for example, in my family, my mom's side, I think hair length is genetic because, for example, in my mom's side, all her sisters, all my aunts, they have long hair and they took that. So I think it's genetic. If there was no that aspect of that, maybe I would not have gotten that. I don't get how the environment could have influenced me to have long hair. Let me tell you how the environment influences you to have long hair. Mm-hmm. If you, let's say it can't be genetic because one, hair length, boys choose to shave. So we can't determine the length of the hair through that, right? So it's environmental because unatumia things to help your hair grow. Hair food, mafuta ya nywele, but sasa you see the environment you're in. Let me give you an example. Let's use Black Americans, right? Black Americans, we assume are just like Africans like us through now the whole history of them moving there and everything. Sindio? But you'll find some of their hair is way different from ours. They're longer and everything. Let me give you another example, dreadlocks, right? My length of my hair is very long. But ingekuwa si dready, haingekuwa refu hivyo. Do you get the point? Because it's tangled hair, the way I treat it, what I use on it and everything. So it's not more, my family has a history of long hair, yes. But utapata kuna mse, temenya teka dready, itakuwa refu kuliko mwenye amekuwa kilia nywele for 8 years and so on. So it's more of environment. How the factors that you're using on your hair, it has nothing to do with genetics. Same thing.
It's both. It's both.
The black Americans knew there was an intermarriage, during the exchange of genes. Sorry, kitu tofauti.
So we all agree it's both. I still want you to do an assignment and research on that and you'll see it's not both, but let's put it on both. Height.
It's both. Americans wanatumia quiz it's both. Yes, it's both.
So height.
Genetically.
Height.
It's both. It's both. There are quiz that
Yes. But at the end of the day, this is supposed to be here.
If you had a chance to add another parameter here, the size of genitalia,
You mean dick size? I don't know, men. Mmenyamaza all of a sudden.
That's both.
Tell us. You think it's both?
I think it just falls between body weight and height, right? Whenever you place body weight,
Yeah. So it has nothing to do with genetics. Anything else? Is there any other point you wanted to add per list that we're bringing?
by that in mind, just took me there.
We have things, personality, there are things like diabetes, cancer, intelligence, intelligence.
So where does, let's put IQ.
Both.
IQ is both. It is at the center.
But more into
EQ and then EQ.
EQ is
Emotional.
EQ is nice.
We all agree. Nika?
Is children's environment.
Yes.
What about AQ? There's a new one. AQ. AQ is adversary quotient, the ability to deal with problems and stress. More important than just intelligence of quotient or intelligence is the ability to deal with problems in life.
I wanted to ask the same thing. You see, the same way we say stress is genetic, suicidal ideations are genetic, meaning how you handle stress can also be genetic.
I think it's both.
And that's why I'm bringing it up, because it's still debated.
So that's what I wanted to. So do we agree? Oh, sorry. So do we agree it's both?
Yes.
Ethan, we agree it's both. Aye, sawa. AQ. I don't think there's anything else to add. Is there anyone with a parting shot? So we've agreed.
I have a parting shot.
Yes.
So we're in agreement that our bodies is not a field where nature versus nurture are actually battling or contending against each other. It looks like it looks like our bodies are. It looks like our bodies are a place where nature and nurture collaborate.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to bring about. Nature and nurture collaborate. CRT, it's not a debate on who is more dominant than the other. Yes?
Also, in as much as I was on the nature side, I also think that nature is important to the environment, because if you have good traits in you, like if you're intelligent, if you're emotionally intelligent, if you have the resilience to lead people, you need people to lead, and that's the society. If you are an outspoken person, you need people to speak to for your trait to be brought out. So yeah, our natural traits, they rely on the environment for them to be brought out, even though it depends on what you do.
Hi everyone. For me, I would say nature plays the biggest role for me personally, because apart from being a scout, I'm also a psychology student. And I must say that many things that I learn and I'm continuing to learn, I've learned through peers. And that's why I was in nature. So the people I interact with, at least wamenifanya nimelearn vitu mobanda. I was exposed at an early, let me call it early age in quotes, because in scouting, when you reach at the rover level, you're supposed to be within the age bracket of 18 to 26 years. So most of the people in the groups of rovers that I've interacted with were above 20 years and above. So I got to learn a lot of things through them.
I'm Immaculate Mumbu. I'm from the University of Nairobi. Okay, though I was late, it's my pleasure meeting these great minds. And it's my prayer that I'll be attending maybe other more debates with you. Okay, for me, maybe I can say I support it 50-50. In some way, we can say that we learn sin from genetic, and also it can be from the environment. But I've learned a lot from the debate.
I'm Marshall Mike from the University of Nairobi. I highly appreciate this great opportunity, having been invited by a friend, but I feel I should attend more of these debates and earlier in time, so that at least you can know the better side of me in terms of debate. And yeah, it's true. I can beat you down. So personally, I highly support it in terms of nature, because nature highly impacts us as compared to genetics, because genetics goes with our okay, I can say it's something that is developed within us, but I think nature holds very much as compared to nature, because our environment, most probably the way people treat you, that's an environment, because it teaches you a lot as compared to what builds up in you. So if it were me debating, I actually can say that nature, that is environment, could have all held 200% of this, nothing more.
Hi, I'm Ian from the Technical University of Kenya. First of all, I like to appreciate Peterson for the invite, though I can say that the debate was good, but my better side was on the environment, because mostly for me, like personally, I go by the environment and how it more than the genetic side. So I would like to know how you conduct your debates, on which day, so that you can come even here with more of our friends, so that you can also know the better sides of us in terms of a debate. I appreciate. Thank you.
Adio Melia. So good evening, guys. So my name is Irongo Peterson from the University of Nairobi, the only university in East, Central, North, and South of Africa, and the best university in the world, of course. Where are we starting? From the invite, something about myself. Okay, as for the 2 minutes I've been in, at least I've helped the group in terms of nature, genetic, because no matter how much you might seem to be relying on environment, this is it. You say how people treat you, you react. How will you know that you react badly to a condition? It's the environment. But when you're not given that chance for you to give that speech, or maybe for you to coordinate something, you'll not be able to understand that trait within you. But the other thing is, you might think you're a good orator. You're given even that speech to even deliver. You're given the crowd. You're given everything that you may think that you're a good orator. But then you fail. That trait is not within you. So the environment, it must be genetic.
That's not a trait. No. I think...
My point in short,
I think... Can I say something? I really enjoyed having this conversation. By the way, I learned. And I think nilikuwa challenged just hearing you guys. You're very outspoken. Mazi, I'm empowered. Man, I loved how you guys were able to be composed in this heated conversation. Yeah. So, simsikilize. You wait. Yeah. So, and most importantly, I had fun. So thank you, Nassim. Thank you, all the partners, for making this possible. And yeah, I haven't attended Hugs events in a while, so I'm really glad I came. Nilikuwa na debate in my head, so I'm glad I came and did it actually out here. And I am sure we won, but I want to say you did a good job. So sawa.
Sawa. Thank you. Thank you guys. Hii kitu tuwezi maliza, si ndio?
Yes. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you on the next debate. Containing with the same fire that you had today. Next time tabeba fidhili, because I'm seeing it's needed. But thanks a lot. Asanteni sana. Sorry?
Parting shot, everyone's supposed to the other side.
Yes, parting shot. I hope you've learned something something at the end. Administer all the debates. Nibati awa kurusha mawe, but I'm not pointing fingers. Security next time. Yeah. And then we can go home now. Thank you very much.